Hello. Good morning. I have one of you on here. I think it's probably Alan. I know a few people couldn't make today, so we may be. Oh, we have a couple people on. Awesome. So if any of you are new, just remember if you need to talk to me or you want to ask a question, just type in the little chat box, and I'll answer your questions. There's a little bit of a delay, and I might not see it right away, your question, but I will definitely go back to it. So this isn't going to be a real long one today. I try to keep those for Saturday morning, the ones that are a little shorter. But we are going to go right into the slides. So today we will be doing Massachusetts real estate laws. A lot of this information, or all of this information, I should say, is in your book. Good morning, Alan. So all of this information is in your book. I also sent you, you may not have seen it yet, I sent all of you the Rules and Regulations Handbook, that PSI, that's the proctor that you go to take your exam. Good morning, Iris. Yes, it's lesson 8. And lesson 8 is regarding the real estate law. So all of the information that you're going to be seeing today is going to come from your Massachusetts book, not the general. This is all stuff that's pertaining to your Massachusetts portion of your exam. You do not have to follow along in your book. When we do this on digital chalk, I make it so you can easily follow along in the book. I don't follow the book completely in order when we do our lessons. Excuse me, but this information is going to be in chapter 11. Also in the handout that I just sent you by email. Again, you do not have to have that in hand to watch it. All right, so I'm not even going to say, or I might catch myself, but not catch myself, but usually I say this is really important. Make sure you write it down for the exam and so forth. I'm not even going to do that because all of this stuff on here you're going to have to know. I know that some of my students that I had before, when I did the live classes, when we did this section, they'd be like, oh yeah, whatever. The board consists of this many members. And really didn't pay too much attention to it because we have all that other stuff that we need to know. But this information you are definitely going to see on the Massachusetts portion of the exam. So when we talk about the Massachusetts licensing rules, we have to talk about the board. Who makes up the board? What do they do? So basically, the licensed real estate brokers and salespersons that are assisting people who want to purchase, sell, lease, and so forth have to be bound by a set of laws. These laws are going to be governed by the governor, who is in charge of our Massachusetts real estate board. They report to him. That will be a question on your exam. Who do they report to? Who does the board report to? They report to the governor. So he's kind of in charge of this. Obviously, he has a lot of other things that he does as well. So he has this board who is going to handle, a lot of the things that we have to deal with, and also be there to help the consumers. And we're going to drill down on what they actually do. So the governor is the appointment authority. My mouse is doing weird things again. There we go. How many people are on the board? The board consists of 5 people. They're on the board for a 5-year term. 3 of those people are licensed real estate professionals, and they have to have been a licensed real estate professional for at least 7 years. I think it's the change in the weather. My voice and my sinuses and everything are crazy today, so probably going to be doing that clearing throat thing today, and I apologize because it probably gets a little annoying. In a moment, I might actually get up and go get some water. So give you guys time to have a cup of coffee or something. So they're consisting of 5 people for a 5-year term, 3 real estate professionals for at least 7 years, and then 2 are designated members of the public. The governor does the appointing. They must hold at least 4 regular meetings. Okay, so I just said I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to just slip it in one more time. Lemon and honey, that sounds good, actually. I might have some lemon and honey tea. Thank you. So, as I said, I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to slip it in here once. These things that I'm talking about right now, how many, what's the term, 5 years, how many are licensed real estate people, how many meetings, 4 meetings, regular meetings, more if needed. You're going to see it on the exam. Oh, look at that. My hubby brought me some water. Maybe because he was being nice, but maybe he didn't want to hear me going, eh, eh, eh. So 4 regular meetings, more if needed. So what is the power of the board? What do they do exactly? So they have to set the laws that we have to govern by. They cannot supersede any of our statutory laws, okay? They cannot supersede anything else that's going on. They can't supersede fair housing laws, any of that good stuff. But they make our rules and regs. They are going to be taking complaints. They may take complaints that we as real estate professionals may submit against other real estate professionals. They are going to take complaints from the consumer. That is where, if we have a grievance, if the consumer has a grievance with one of us, that's where they go to. They report that complaint to the board. That board also, when you get your license, is going to review all of your documents that you send in, because they want to know that that sales professional is of good moral character. That's why when you fill out your candidate handbook, it's going to ask for some references on there. And those references are vouching for your moral character. They also are going to be reviewing the exam. There may be different laws that come into place. So not that long ago, seems forever now, but we had some new laws come into effect on the financing end of things, where lenders had to give the consumer a disclosure, and we'll talk about this in financing, but they had to give them a disclosure 3 days before closing. Because what was happening was, back in the day, like when I started this, you would not even see the seller, the realtors, the buyer. Nobody would see that closing settlement statement until they got to the closing table. And then if there were any errors or things that the consumer maybe didn't understand, or he had to come up with some money, they used to get a phone call saying, or the day before, okay, you need to bring a certified check for X. They were like, what's going on? We didn't know about this. We didn't know how much. So now that consumer needs to see that 3 days before closing, so that he can go over any of that information and question anything that he's not certain about. So when that came into play, they decided that we needed to start teaching about that. And so they started slipping that into a question about that into the exam. When they do new questions, when new things come apart, they slip some questions into the exam. Some of the questions that you have on your exam may not count towards your test score. That usually happens if there's some changes that have taken place, and they want to make sure that we're teaching it. So what they do is they slip it in there, and they kind of follow that question, and they say, okay, Are people just not getting this? If they're not getting it, and there's a good many of people, then they send us letters saying, you're not teaching this material well enough because everybody's missing this. You better figure out a different way, or you don't have it in your curriculum because everybody's missing it. So they'll monitor it. And then when they see that, everybody is complying and most of the students seem to be getting that right, then they'll start making that question count. But they'll listen to those complaints, they'll schedule hearings, they'll have, and we're going to get into the procedure. I won't get into that right now, about what people do when they have a complaint. These are just some of the things that they have to deal with. Examination of records. So they can come and they can call us and they can say, me, the broker, Morningstar Realty, I want to come and I want to see all of your agency disclosures that your office has dealt with in the past 3 years. Because we as a broker are supposed to keep all those agency disclosures that our salespeople and we present to the consumer when we meet someone for the first time to discuss a specific property. Remember, we give them a agency disclosure. Make sure you do it and make sure you know that, because that's going to be on the exam. We give an agency disclosure when we meet someone to discuss a specific property for the first time. Again, we go into that in detail in our agency chapters. However, we as brokers have to hold on to those agency disclosures. So what used to happen in the old day, with the filing cabinet and so forth, everybody would come in, you'd be working on a transaction, and you would put that agency disclosure that you had your consumer sign in a folder in the office so that all those folders were held onto by the broker in case the board sent somebody to examine those. Now what most people do is they tell their agents to scan it in. Sometimes you're going to give your broker a copy of the offer, anything else that pertains to it. You can scan it all up, but it usually goes into one document if you do it that way. I always tell my agents, just as soon as you have an agency disclosure signed, scan it in to me or bring it into the office so I can scan it in, and I just send it up to the cloud in a folder that I have. That way, if anybody ever comes from the board that says, I want to see your agency disclosures, and why might they do that? Who knows? There may have been something else involved in that transaction that caught their eye. So they want to start from the first thing. Let me look at your agency disclosure. Okay, that looks cool. Wait a minute, we're not done yet. We want to see your folder. We want to see the offer. We want to see the purchase and sales agreement. So they can do those things. So the examination of records. Also, they have to keep their own records, because if the governor for some reason calls them, remember he oversees that board, and says, I want to see your records for this meeting. I want to see any receipts you might have. I want to see any itemized copies of receipts for material that you may have used, expenses, and so forth. Have to keep those records. So what is the hearing and appeals? So what happens is somebody must, in writing, send in the complaint. It must be signed by the complainant. So the complainant is the person that is filing the complaint. The respondent is the person that is the complaint is being filed against. So that complainant needs to write it out. He can call the board and say, I'm complaining about this. And they say, okay, we're going to look into this, but you need to put it all in writing and sign it and send it to us. The board must provide at least 10 days written notice to the respondent of any hearing that's going to take place regarding. All right, 10 days. Remember these dates, please. Or remember this timeline. The licensee has a right to an attorney but is not entitled to an attorney. You're going to see something about that on the exam, and I'll say it again. The licensee has a right to an attorney, but is not entitled to one. So what does that mean? You have a complaint filed against you. It's 10 days. They're telling you in 10 days you have a hearing. So in 10 days, you're going to go up to Boston, and you can bring an attorney. You can bring your own attorney if you choose to. However, what's meant by is not entitled to an attorney means that the board is not paying for an attorney for you, or you can't use one of their attorneys. All right, so you can bring your own attorney at your own expense. So they go through the hearing, and you're found that this complaint has some merit, and you're going to be held responsible for it. So any person that is aggrieved by any unfavorable decision by the board may appeal to Superior Court within 20 days. 20 days of being notified of the decision. And then once they do that, once they appeal to the Superior Court, then they have to hold a hearing within 10 days. Now, those are all the dates that you have that you need for your exam when they talk about the hearings and so forth. But, let me tell you, in real life, most likely that's not going to happen, those 10 days and all of that. Most likely, even when you send documents up to the board for your licensing and all of that stuff, you're not going to get it. I'm still waiting. I had a couple of students that wanted, that had some questions, and they were questions that I had to write to the board to find out, and I still haven't received the answers, and it's been, a couple of months now. So things were always a little slow there. This is not for your exam. This is for real life now. Things were always a little slow there, and now with the whole COVID thing, everything is really slow. But for your exam, those dates, 10 days, the complainant files in writing, hearing has to be within 10 days. If the respondent does not like what was found, he can appeal to Superior Court. Once he appeals, they have to have a hearing within 10 days, and he has 20 days to appeal. So they can, depending on what the complaint was, they could either suspend, revoke, or refuse to renew or reinstate a license. But what I want you to know is, if you are a licensed professional and you are waiting for a hearing, your license cannot be suspended while the hearing is going on or while you're waiting for the hearing. All right, you have to, after the hearing, that will determine what is going to go on with your license. Are you just going to get fined? What's going to happen? But while the process is happening, they cannot suspend your license. Within 7 days of hearing that your license has been revoked or suspended, you're supposed to actually physically go and bring them your license. Again, that's what you need, probably. I don't even know if they have that question in there, but that's what you had in the past needed. That's what you had needed to do, was to physically bring it up there. You may not have to do that now. You may be able to just put it in the mail. So we had a question. It said, can you explain the 10 days again? So the 10 days pretty much is when so somebody has a complaint against you, Iris. They have to file that complaint, and they have to put it in writing, and they have to send it to the board. The board has to notify you of a hearing, but they have to give you at least 10 days notice. All right, they have to email you or send you a letter saying that there's been a complaint against you, and in 10 days from the date of this letter, we are going to have a hearing. but they have to give you 10 days notice. So they have the 10 days notice, you have the hearing. If you decide that, you still feel that you were unjustly accused, you can appeal that to Superior Court within 20 days. And then once they get that, if you appeal within the 20 days, they can have another hearing, but they also have to give you 10 days notice for that hearing. Okay, you good with that? All right. So suspend, revoke. They cannot suspend your license while the trial or while the hearing, not trial, is taking place. If you have found to have committed the act, your license will usually be suspended for 90 days. If you have another violation or complaint that you have been found, guilty of, then and you do that happens within a 2-year period, then your license will be suspended for 90 days. If you have any more after that, your license could be revoked. But the first one is usually suspended for 60 days. Licensing requirements. Okay, this is all going to be on your Massachusetts portion of your exam. Anyone who, and this is the definition, and it's the definition of that brokerage too. If you think back when we did the brokerage lesson, anyone who performs real estate services, either as a broker or a salesperson for a fee. Remember I talked about that? If you are performing any of those services for a fee, you need a license. Now, sometimes, you may, like I just came back from New York. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is. And so somebody in my family had real estate questions, and I was giving them some real estate advice, and I was helping them with a transaction and blah, blah, blah. I'm not collecting a fee for them, and I'm not licensed in New York. So, I didn't have to worry about that. But here in Massachusetts, if I am going to, even if a friend of mine says, oh, can you just help me, list this or do some, they call you, Iris, and you or Ellen, and they say, can you give me a hand with this? I just don't have time to deal with these rentals and all of this stuff for this new investment property I just purchased. So could you do the screening of the tenants for me? And could you do this? And could you do that? And could you show it? Could you check out the credit reports? And you do all this stuff for me. I'll pay you. I'll give you a check. Unless that person is going to hire you on the books to be an employee, and you're doing some of those things as part of your service to him for your employment, then you have to have a license. Which brings us into, if you're selling a property for somebody for money, obviously you have to have a license. You're helping them purchase, you have to have a license. If somebody wants to, if you are helping, again, the same thing, you're helping your friend, your family member sell their own property, and you're not collecting a fee for it or whatnot, but you need to have a license. Obviously, if you're doing these things on your own, if you are going to, you go to your friend who is selling his house, FSBO, for sale by owner, and you say, I'm interested in your house, and you guys work out a deal. He can sell his house, you can buy his house. There's no fee involved as far as that commission type of a fee. You guys can do that deal together without either one of you having a license. But if you are going to do the sales, the purchases, rentals or leases, negotiating is kind of, I don't even know why I leave this slide in there. You know, you're really not going to do any negotiating anyway, but if for some reason you were negotiating a deal for somebody and they were paying you to do it, of course, license. Any offers that are presented, license. You certainly are not going to take a listing. If you take a listing, if somebody says, again, like the rental, will you help me sell my house? You get all the information, you put it up on Craigslist, you can even enter it on Zillow yourself now as a for sale by owner, and you do all of these things. And he says, just handle it for me, I'll pay you to do it. I just don't have the time. You need to have a license to do that in Massachusetts if you're getting paid to do any of those things. Loan negotiating, you know, you're not really gonna, that's in your book, but you're not gonna really negotiate a loan for somebody. Let me go back here just for a second to options. So when they talk about options, usually when you're talking about options, this is going to be handled by a broker, a stockbroker, or somebody who has a separate type of license to handle that type of sales and negotiation. So apartment search is a little interesting. They kind of group a lot of things into this. So there are places like Craigslist, for example. That's just one of the many. Apartment finders or whatever, that list. Somebody can go and they can list an apartment for rent. Now Craigslist, or the CEO of Craigslist, doesn't have a broker's license, right? This is just a service he is providing to people to post, buy and sell things. If it is your own property, you can post on Craigslist, 2-bedroom, $200 a month, blah, 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 blah. You still have to adhere to all the fair housing rules, which if you go take a look at Craigslist, apartments that are being listed without brokers, you could, once you get to know what some of the laws are a little bit more, you'll cringe. However, you don't need a license for that if it's your own. You can help your friend post his listings up there for his or her investment property. You're doing them a favor because you're on Craigslist a lot. You know how it works. You're not getting paid for it. You're just doing them a favor. You don't need a license. If you are a broker, so oftentimes if I have a listing, sometimes a house listing, but always a rental listing, I put it on MLS, but I also put it on Craigslist. Almost always. You get a lot of activity. If I am listing a house or I'm listing an apartment on Craigslist or apartment.com or whatnot, I have to let the consumer know that I am a realtor. I'm a licensed real estate professional. In that advertisement, I have to put what my name is, what my telephone number is, who my broker is, what my broker's telephone and address are. That has to be disclosed in that ad. So whoever, when the consumer is looking at that ad, they have to know that they are dealing with a sales professional. If you are going to be collecting a fee from somebody, not your seller because or your landlord, because you have an agreement already with them. But if you're going to be getting any kind of a fee for them, that has to be disclosed in there as well. But this is mainly, this chapter that we'll talk about that when we talk about advertising a little bit more, but this is mainly for your the licensing portion of it. You have to make sure that if you are going to assist somebody in an apartment searching, whether it's your friend, your mother, whoever, and they're paying you for it, then in Massachusetts, you need to have a license. Trying to think. I don't think I have it on here, but I want you to you will see it in your book. An attorney does not have to have a license. I don't know why I don't have that. I should have that in here. An attorney does not have to have their own, like a separate real estate. They do not have to take the real estate course that we're about to go through, because when they got their law degree, they took real estate. Part of that, has real estate law in there. And a lot of this information you're learning is the same thing. So they don't make them go take this whole course over again. All right, types of licenses. In Massachusetts, you have a broker's license or you have a salesperson's license. Remember, when you pass this exam, you will not be realtors until you join the National Association of Realtors. You will be a salesperson. And then we'll walk through right now the steps that, in a few years, if you want to get your broker's license, you can. So we have a broker's license and we have the sales license. Both of those licenses are valid for a period of 2 years from the licensee's birthday. And it's renewed every 2 years. You'll get documents in the mail, time for your renewals. Have you done your continuing ed courses? Yes, check all this off, send it up to the board, and, they reinstate your license. Or not reinstate it, I shouldn't say that, they renew it. So when they say it is valid for a period of 2 years from the licensee's birthday, so say your birthday is in December. When you go, or whatever, to say the middle of the month, say the middle of the year, say June. So I have a question. So you can't use your license until you register with National. No, that's not it at all. So you see the little logos, the little R, and you see people say, oh, I'm a realtor. Or they say, Iris, that you put an advertisement and you put the little logo R on there, meaning that you're a realtor. You can't use any of that. You can't use that logo or any of that in any of your advertising. You cannot call yourself a realtor. You say, I'm a salesperson. I'm a sales professional, not a realtor. You can still use your license. However, I will tell you that when you start working for an office, if that broker is a realtor, is a member of a local board, is a member of the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, and is a member of the National Association of Realtors, they are probably going to say that you do have to join those organizations in order to work at their office. If you are, especially, it's pretty much a given. There are some local independent companies out there that are not realtors. However, I think that they're far and few between. So you can, if you find someone that says you can work there, we don't belong to the National Association of Realtors, you can go with the license that you have from here, and you can work for them. And you can do sales and rentals and all of that and get a commission. However, you cannot call yourself a realtor. When you belong to the National Association of Realtors, you have a lot of benefits that come with it too. So when your license comes up for renewal, between your license and then your fees for your local board, your Massachusetts board, and your National Association board, it comes to about like $580, something like that for the year. However, you also get all of your continuing eds free. So if you are a sales professional, you still have to have continuing eds within those 2 years, but you're going to have to pay for those if you're not a member of an organization of the National Association or MAR. They have training, free training. They have training on all the products that you're going to be using, zip forms, dot loops, all this other stuff. They have free forms that you can go and get online that you're going to be using in your everyday business. So really that $500 and something for the year, plus they have attorneys available to you. If you have legal questions, you call the hotline and you say, I have this legal question, and they have an attorney get back to you. So those are some of the benefits. But to answer your question, no, that's not correct. You can use your license. You just cannot, call yourself a realtor or take advantage of any of the realtor things that they have unless you belong to the National Association. Good? You good with that? So back to the type of licenses. You're welcome. Back to the type of licenses, broker and salesperson, both for 2 years from the license's birthday. So if you get it in July, your first license would be, a little bit longer, because it would go for the rest. It would go from July to December, and then start new again in January, and then go to for 2 years. So it would be almost like 2 years and 6 months. But just know that it's 2 years from the licensee's birthday and renewed every 2 years. Stick on this one for a minute. Well, corporate versus individual. So if you are a corporation, they do not have to have, everybody in the corporation does not have to have a license. So a lot of times corporations will buy and sell real estate for particular, for whatever reasons. They're for investment purposes, on behalf of a client, whatnot. One member of the board has to have a broker's license. Just one member of the board, one officer, or I shouldn't say member of the board, one officer or partner. They have to apply for their license in their own name. So the license cannot be in ABC company has a broker's license. It has to be in the name of one of those partners. They have to hold it. Then all of the other people that work in that corporation are doing business under their license. But it's part of their job to do it. So they don't all individually have to have a license. So a corporate, the officer, at least one officer or partner needs to have a license, and it has to be in their own name. Non-resident. So we have reciprocal licenses with a couple of different states. So we can have a reciprocal license with Rhode Island, for example. We have to send paperwork to Rhode Island. Then we have to take one test, one course. I think it's the lead paint. They have their own lead paint. It's a 2-hour lead paint course that we have to take. Once we have proof that we've taken that course, we pay them our dues. We now have a Rhode Island license as well as our Massachusetts license. However, if you are a salesperson and you work for an office and you want your Rhode Island license, that broker of that office has to have their reciprocal license as well. So if somebody wanted to come to work at ABC company, and they do, and they say, oh, I want to get I have a lot of friends and family in Rhode Island. I want to get my Rhode Island license as well. If that broker does not have, their Massachusetts broker does not have a reciprocal Rhode Island license, they cannot get one either. The broker has to. Why? Because you always have to be working for a broker and only one broker at a time. One broker at a time. So you're a snow bunny and you like to go to Florida in the winter and you want your Florida license. Your Massachusetts broker has to have their Florida license as well. You cannot say, well, my broker in Massachusetts doesn't have a Rhode Island license, so when I'm doing Rhode Island business, I'm just going to work for that broker in Rhode Island. And when I work for when I'm selling houses down there, I'll just work for a different broker. You can't. You can only work for one broker at a time, even if it's within different states. That's why if you want to get your reciprocal license and you want to, your broker has to do it. Iris has another question. What about if they have a Mass license but also want to have a license in another country? And if you want to have a license in another country, I honestly don't know how it works. We do not have any reciprocal licensing. Our Massachusetts licensing, you cannot get a reciprocal license in another country. So if you are licensed in another country, I honestly don't know how that would work. If you want to have a license in Portugal or in Mexico or in Italy or wherever, it's definitely not going to be reciprocal of our Massachusetts license. And you probably would have to go through all of the work that you're doing here to get the license there. And I don't think that you can. I think that you have to notify the board. Well, you would probably have to do it just like you do anywhere else. So if I want to get a license, that's okay. No, you don't have to be sorry for questions. That is not going to be on your exam anyway, but I'll just, in case you're thinking about it, I'll give you a quick, answer here. If you want to get a license in somewhere that is not reciprocal, say you're going to Colorado and you're going to be living there for 8 months and you want to get your real estate license there, you have to notify the board. So in Massachusetts, we're not reciprocal. Your broker is not going to have a license there. So what you have to do is actually call the board and you have to say, I am leaving the state for 8 months. I'd like to suspend my license because I'm going to practice real estate there as well. So maybe that's the same thing you would do if you went to another country. But that's not going to be on the exam, so we're not going to get crazy about that. Who's eligible for the license? You need to be 18 years or older. You have to have filed your taxes to the best of your knowledge. You don't have any taxes that are due. You may be required to make take a personal interview for the board. So I think that I've had this happen once or twice where somebody has had an issue in their past. And you have to fill out a CORI form. That's a criminal, Ellen, what is that? CORI, I forget what it stands for. Criminal offense something. But you have to fill out a CORI. And you have to have the people vouch for you. So if there's something that comes up on that license or on that application, the board may say to you, okay, go take your exam. But before we just give you your license right there on the spot, like which normally happens, we want you to come up for an interview. All right, so you go up and you interview them. They ask you whatever questions they want to, and they say yes or no on your exam, on your license. Citizenship is still listed on the board site, that you have to be a citizen. However, The Attorney General pretty much says that that does not have to be enforced. So, you know, for your exam, I don't even know if they'll put that question on there because it's kind of gray right now. But in your book, it will say 18 years or older, file your taxes, they have to have a personal interview, and citizenship is still listed on there. Because the Attorney General is saying that it does not have, that part doesn't have to be enforced, you may not see that on your exam. You have to be in good moral standing. Like I said, you fill out that booklet, 3 people have to vouch for you, and then you have your query. If you have been arrested within 7 years, the board is definitely going to review you. And depending on what you were arrested for, you may not. Is my signal okay, guys? Can you see and hear me okay? Or is there a lot of lagging? Because I usually have, I'm hardwired in, and I usually have a really high 5-bar signal, and I'm noticing that my bars are 1 and 2. So let me, you can? Okay, awesome. All right, what else do you need to have your license? Thanks, guys. Just kind of weird. I never see it, the signal bouncing around like this. So you also need to have the 40-hour class, which is what you're doing now. You have to do it for your brokers and for your salespersons. Now, when I give the broker course, it's the same course. So sometimes you may see students dropping in and out. Like right now, I have, I think, like 9 students. A lot of them have, 3 of them, other than the 2, not counting the 2 of you, are new, and they're kind of focusing on their digital chalk right now. And I have, you know, I think 4 or so that are in review process right now, so you don't see them on here. But one of them is taking the brokers, getting ready for the brokers course. It's the same exact material. And so it's good to have the refresher. They go, oh man, it's the same material all over again. Yeah, it is. But what happens when they go to take their broker's exam, they will have more questions on certain subjects. Like they'll have more questions on brokerage. They'll maybe have more questions on contracts and so forth. All right, so it's the same material. So they both have to have their 40 hours. And then they go and they take their PSI exam, their written exam. I shouldn't call it a PSI exam. They go and they take their Massachusetts salesperson exam, which encompasses the general material, which is in your yellow book. And then the second test is the Massachusetts portion, where you're going to see a lot of this stuff in here. All right. When you take your exam, and we'll talk about your test taking, but you're going to go in, you can't copy questions, you can't take notes, all that good stuff. But we'll give you, we'll give you all of that information in detail before you go. The age requirement is 18. I always laugh about this because it says you have to be, well, I'll tell you what cracks me up in a minute. So 18 years old. If you are going for your broker's license, when you go there in your packet, you have to have a surety bond, a $5,000 surety bond. Again, make sure you remember that for your exam. The surety is the insurance company that backs the bond with a financial guarantee, basically saying that we're going to guarantee any money or property that's turned over to the agent or to the broker in a real estate transaction. We're going to make sure that's accounted for truthfully and honestly and securely. That's what that surety bond, that $5,000 surety bond is going to do. It doesn't cost $5,000 for the surety bond. It costs like $50. Even if you get your broker's license, but you're going to still work for a different office, you're not going to have your own office, you still have to get this bond. This is part of the paperwork that you need to have when you get your broker's license. You could be working as a broker agent in another office and not be the broker of record. So the broker experience, so this is the thing that always cracks me up. It says you had to have had your license for at least 3 years and have worked a minimum of 25 hours a week during those 3 years. You have to take the 40-hour exam and you have to pass it, and you have to have the surety bond. And then they say, and you have to be 18 years of age. That always cracks me up. I don't know why, because you have to be 18 years of age to take your exam, your salesperson's exam. But you have to work as a salesperson for 3 years before you can take your broker's license. So you have to be at least 21 to take your broker's license. But don't worry about that. Just know you'll see 18 years of age, maybe in one of your questions. That's how old you have to be at least minimum. Broker, 3 years, minimum of 25 hours a week. Take the 40-hour course and have your surety bond. The residency. The broker has to have an office in the state where you live. It does not have to be a brick and mortar physical office. You just have to have the office listed with the state. The board has to know where your office is, and if you change, you have to let them know within 30 days that you've changed your address. So if you're going to probably see a question on your exam. I think they always have one, something like this, that says, Joe had his twin brother go take his exam for him, and his brother passed, and it was his Massachusetts license, and the rent was cheaper in New Hampshire for his office, so he just opened up an office right over the border in New Hampshire, and blah, blah, blah. That's this whole list of things, and the question will say, how many violations did Joe break? And you list 1, the brother took the exam. 2, he was in New Hampshire, not in Massachusetts, and you'll see it. It goes on. It's kind of a silly question, but there's a million of violations there. But one of them is the rent was cheaper in New Hampshire, so he crossed over the border, just over the line, and opened up and rented a little building there. You can't do that. You have to have your office in the state where your license is. So if you have a Mass license, you have to have your office there. Now, if you're doing that reciprocal thing, you can have that license, a reciprocal license in another state, and you don't have to have an office there. Temporary, you always see this, always on the exam. Temporary license on the death of a broker. So sometimes the sole proprietor might have somebody say, to somebody, it could be a spouse, it could be, another agent in their office, whatever. I'm a sole proprietor. If something happens to me, you are allowed to run my business without a broker's license for a year. They give you a year because they figure that what happens is the sole proprietor dies, there's transactions there, right? There's maybe they've got a listing, maybe they got a closing ready to happen and whatnot. There's money in escrow, those people can't just be left in limbo. So somebody can take over the goings on in that office for 1 year without being a broker. After that 1 year though, you have to have a licensed broker take over that business, or you have to close the doors. So most likely what would happen if nobody's going to take over that office, that whoever takes over a year's time would be enough for that listing. Maybe the listing you would just, cancel the listing and it would go to somebody else. Or the transactions that are in the queue could complete, and a year would be most likely enough time for that. The temporary license for 1 year on the death of a broker. If your license is inactive, you can get a referral fee. It can be revoked though, your license, even if it's inactive, but you still have it. It hasn't been suspended yet. You can still collect a referral fee. So I know people that have their license, they continue their continuing eds and all of that stuff so that they can keep their license, active, I should say. I guess it's, whatever. They can keep their license in good standing. And they can collect a referral fee. But if you do that, you can collect a referral fee from whoever. You don't have to say you don't want to belong to the National Association of Realtors. You don't want to belong to a local board. You don't want to have that expense because you're not going to be doing that full time. You can just say to different agents in the area, hey, I have a lead, on somebody. Will you give me a referral fee for that? Almost everybody will. I'll give anybody a referral fee that wants to give me a referral, especially for a listing right now. You have a listing referral for me? Absolutely, I'll give you a referral fee. I shouldn't say from anybody that had a license. And I will give you a referral fee. But if you actually practice, like you go and you list a house and you take a commission, full commission from the client and all of that stuff, now you're going to lose your license. But people do make they make a nice little side business if they do not want to work full time on referrals. Are the exemptions from the licensing? So remember, you buy, sell, lease, blah, 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 all of that stuff for a fee. You have to be licensed, but there are some exemptions. Individuals acting for themselves, salaried employee or manager that's doing that sale or rental in as part of their employment. They're not getting a separate commission for that. This is just part of their job. Maybe they work for that corporation that has the broker in there. Maybe they work for an insurance company. Maybe they work for an investment company that buys and sells real estate. If you are an auctioneer, you do not have to have a separate license to buy or sell real estate. Usually sell real estate. So somebody forecloses on a bank forecloses, they don't want to put it in a realtor's hands yet. They just want to put it up for auction and get rid of it. They have that. They can do that sale under their own license. Okay, they can do it under their own license. Trustees are going to possibly be buying or selling, for their trustor. They don't have to have a license. It's almost like you're doing it for yourself. Public officer or an employee performing their duties. Power of attorney. You have been given a POA, power of attorney, to buy or sell property for another person. And of course, the attorney, which we've already talked about, is unless they're acting as a broker for commission for themselves. If they are doing the buying or selling, acting for a client, they do not have to have a separate license. Bank and credit unions, insurance companies, if they're acting like for themselves or their client foreclosing on properties, buying and selling. They don't have to have a broker's license. All right. Good on those. That's the requirements of who needs to have a listing. That has to have a license. What the requirements for that license are, the age limits, and the exemptions. All right, we're going to quickly move into the statutory requirements governing activities of licensees, and then we're done. So advertising. When we say statutory requirements, these are things that some of these might be the same that you're going to see regarding advertising in your general book, but right now we're talking about Massachusetts and how Massachusetts governs us as far as licensing, as far as our advertising. We can have no blind ads. You'll see that on your exam. I said I wasn't going to keep saying that over and over again, right? Because all of this you're going to see on your exam. No blind advertising means that I can't put an ad in the paper that says, Dawn Devlin is selling this house at 123 Main Street for $500,000. Give her a call, blah, blah, blah. I have to say, Dawn Devlin, Morningstar Realty, or I have to say Morningstar Realty, listing agent, Dawn Devlin. Somewhere it has to be who you're working for. You have to let them know that you're an agent. You have to have your telephone number. You have to have the broker's telephone number. All right. Otherwise, people might think they're just dealing with an individual, not a licensed individual. Salesperson's ads. This one you guys have to be careful of. I still see it. We're not talking about just print ads here. We're talking about social media. So I have a new agent. She's actually brand new to real estate as well. She has been gung-ho and she's been really working hard. And she's done some great things. But I was looking at, she just put a social media page up and I was looking at it and she's like, was all excited and she's like, look at this. And I'm like, you know what? It's awesome. And I like everything that you did. But somewhere on that page, you have to say, because it just had her name, like /realtor. And, salesperson /realtor, call me, some beautiful pictures, some great advice and all of that good stuff. But if somebody looked at that page, they'd have no idea who she was working for. O is the name of your company, just your name or whatnot. So, and you also have to have, on any of your ads, you have to have equal housing opportunity on there. Even social media, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, if you're going to do any advertising or anything there, they won't run your ads anymore. They just say it's rejected. Please look at our instructions on this type of an ad. And if you're dealing with housing or anything like that, you have to have the equal housing opportunity sign on there. You can't, so we used to do something on some of the social media sites where you could boost your advertising. And I would select like between whatever, this age group and this age group. Those are the people I want to see my ad, blah, 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 blah. Now they say you have to tweak that. They'll give you some guidelines because they might say you're discriminating against somebody who's older or younger. So again, for the exam, I want you to know blind ads. I want you to know that a salesperson, you can't just advertise your own stuff. You have to make sure that they know that you're working for a brokerage and what brokerage. When you get into the real world, your broker manager, mentor is going to, look at every ad that you put out there, is going to look at, anything that you're doing, your documents and so forth to make sure that you're compliant. No discriminatory advertising ever. We go into that big, we've just done fair housing recently. You have fair housing in your units and chapters on Digital Chalk. It's really important, and it's really an important one to me. We have a zero tolerance, and thank God my agents are on board with me with that, or it wouldn't be a good fit here for them. But we don't have any discrimination in our office. We don't have any discrimination in our advertising. If you have any discrimination in your advertising, especially in today's climate, you are going to be fined. So you need to be careful about your words. In your Massachusetts book as well, it's going to give you things that you can and cannot say. I'm not going to list them all on here. You'll see it on Digital Chalk, but when you're going through the units and chapters, you will see them on your, you will see them in your book. The list, you can say this, you can't say that, okay? It's just too many to just give you a list of things right now, and I think you'd do better seeing them anyway. Broker and salesperson relationship. The broker can only work for, the salesperson can only work for one broker at a time. That broker is responsible for that salesperson. So you may say, Alan is so excited because he just went and got a listing. Woohoo! That's my client. It is your client. You're going to work with them like your client. You're going to give them that old car. You're going to give them that, you have that fiduciary responsibility to that. But really that client relationship, that agency relationship is with that agent or with that homeowner and your broker. You, the agent, are just in the middle to work with that seller, that homeowner, on behalf of your broker. Okay, so the broker, and so this, which also brings me to this, the broker is responsible for that salesperson's action while they are doing real estate. So example I always give, Susan was, driving around with buyers, rushing from appointment to appointment, and she blew through a stop sign and people got injured. She's going to be responsible. That broker is going to be responsible for her actions too, because she was doing real estate business. Flip it over and you say Susan was driving her friends to dinner and they were going to be late for their reservation and she blew through a stop sign and people were injured. And she's still a real estate person, right? Is her broker responsible? No, because she was doing those things outside of her real estate business. She wasn't working as a real estate professional at that time. But it goes to your documents and everything. Your broker is going to be responsible. Independent contractor versus employee. Again, you're going to see this. When you go to work for somebody, they are going to give you an independent contractor contract. This contract is going to say, this is what we expect from you, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to say you need to be here 9 to 5. It's not going to say that these are your duties. It's not going to say punch in, punch out. It's not going to say you get this many vacation days, you get sick time, you get your benefits, you get all of that stuff, because those things mean you're an employee. The independent contractor may have a couple of things. They may say, we want you to come to, meetings, or, you have to upload all of your documents to the cloud to me. You have to do this, you have to do that. All right, those are just things, because even though you're an independent contractor, your broker still is responsible for those agency disclosures and some of those forms and that good stuff, right? But they're going to pay you a commission. Get excited when you see that check. Make sure you take half of it and you put it in the bank for taxes. So know those differences between that independent contractor versus employee. Salesperson must work for that broker, one broker. If there is any kind of conflict of interest, if there is any conflict of interest, meaning I just sold my own property recently. I had to put right on MLS, listing agent has an investment in this property. All right, I have to let people know that or has an interest in this property. I have to let people know that I'm involved. If I'm working with my daughter, which I did not long ago, when I submitted that offer, on that offer, I wrote in, broker is related to the buyer, is a family member of the buyer. If you have interest, monetary interest in the property, or if you have interest in somebody that's buying or selling the property, or it's your own, you have to let somebody know. You have to let everybody know. Commissions are always negotiated. That fee, thank you. That fee is always negotiated between that seller, the property owner, and the broker. That's who sets the fee for the commission. There is no standard, we always charge this amount for, maybe your office does have some kind of a policy. But if that seller says, I'm looking at this and that, can you do this or that? That's always between the broker and, the broker and the homeowner. Commissions are never to be discussed. They're never to be discussed in your office. They are never to be discussed outside of your office. So you don't go to lunch and sit at a table where people can hear you and say, my office, always charges 5 apples for residential and 6 oranges for commercial. No, you don't do that. Because people going by to say, I saw a group of people sitting around, they were talking about commissions, and I think they might have been price fixing. So somebody could misunderstand this conversation and they could say, that they were setting prices. That goes against the Sherman Antitrust Act. The Sherman Antitrust Act. All right, the Sherman Antitrust Act says that you cannot get together with other people in your industry and set prices or set commissions. Say, we're all going to sell commercial and charge this much for a commission. We're all going to sell residential and sell this much for commission. Okay, you can't do that. And you definitely do not talk about commissions in your office between agents, because everybody may be set up on your office on a different scale. Or you may go in and your broker, and you might sign a contract that says you're going to get X amount. If you get to this point, you're going to get this amount for your split. And after this amount, blah, 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 and all of that. But maybe you have done great and your broker wants to adjust that a little bit. And comes to you and says, you know what? Let's have a meeting. This is what we're going to do. This is what you're going to get now. You're not going to go out into your office and go, woo, look, I just got a raise. You do not just discuss commissions with anybody, ever. No, Iris, there is no cap on commission. There's, you're not going to go and say to somebody, I'm going to, go here, or I'm going to go way down here. It's whatever your broker and that person decide on. When you go on that listing appointment, your broker is going to see, this is what we normally do. So when you present this listing, when you go to take that listing, this is how you present it to the seller. Now, if your seller says, no, Iris, I don't want to pay that, but I'll pay you this. You can't just say, yes, okay, I'll take it. because we all want listings right now and we're excited. You have to go to your broker. You do not have the authority to say yes. You have to say to that person, all right, let me bring this to my broker and see what she says. But there's no cap. It's whatever the broker and the seller decide. The only thing that you cannot do is you cannot do a net listing. So you can't say that seller wants to net $200,000 after all expenses. You can sell it for $250,000, and so that's cool because I'm going to get a $50,000 commission. No, you can't do that. You cannot take a net listing, but other than that, there's no cap. Handling of documents has to be secure and confidential. We talked about this, Alan, you remembered? We talked about this in one of the other lessons. You can't have files just loose around. You can't have copies of people's checks that you have to submit with the offer, with their account numbers and so forth. Everything, once you take a copy of that, you should just shred it. There's no reason for you to even have it. You take a copy of it, it gets sent up into the cloud, it gets sent. You have somebody, your broker is going to want to have a copy of that because the lender is going to probably want a copy of that once that transaction gets into underwriting and so forth. But you don't want to have any copies of that stuff, okay? All documents have to be secured. You have to present all offers. All offers. So, especially in a market like we have it now, you can't say, say like you have an open house or you have 15 showings. I just talked to somebody who had 20 showings, and it was just like a crazy day. All day they were at a place. I had a listing not that long ago right up the street from me. First day it went on the market, I don't even know how many phone calls I had. And we had like several offers within that day. I had to get all of those offers. So when you see stuff like that happening, you just tell everybody that's offering, listen, we're going to hold these, and I'm going to submit all the offers like tomorrow by 2:00 to the seller. We'll go over them all. And, so make sure this is your highest and best offer from your buyer by this time or whatnot. But all offers have to be presented. So if you have 4 offers for $400,000 and you have 2 offers for $200,000, you can't just say, I want to throw these away and not present them to my seller. You have to present every single offer that comes in. The seller decides. Maybe he's going to see that person's name and he's going to be like, oh my God, this is my best friend's daughter or whatnot. For whatever reason, he gets to make the choice or she gets to make the choice of who they want to purchase their home. So you have to present all offers. In this instance, in this climate that we have, I always say, I present the offer, and if I get a phone call that says your offer has been rejected, I'm like, that really is awful. Please make sure your seller signs that offer form has been rejected and send it to me. I want to make sure that seller has seen my buyer's offer, especially now. So that offer comes in. If I have the listing and I get 20 offers in, I have my seller sign every one of them that's been rejected and send that off, and I have them sign the one that's been accepted and send that off. Distribute contract to all parties. That's kind of a no-brainer. Everybody has to sign it. Everybody gets a copy of it. Handling of monies. There can be zero commingling of funds. The money goes from you as an agent. You go and you get money to hold with your offer. You get money to hold with your purchase and sales agreement. That's brought to your broker. Your broker has to put that in an escrow account. It sits in that escrow account. It's a separate account from his general business funds. It sits there until closing. When the closing is happening, that can get transferred over to the general funds. That way they can write a commission check out of the general funds or whatever they have to do. Okay, but it has to sit in there until closing or until that money gets dispersed back to the buyer because the deal has fell apart or whatnot. No commingling of funds. And you have to handle that money in a timely manner. If you're an agent and you're going to collect that escrow money, you have to make sure you get it to your broker ASAP. You can't just hang on to it for a week. That check has to be in the account. A lot of times, and we all do it, you might make a check, copy of the check. This is the check to bind this offer, blah, blah, blah. You have to wait a couple days before you know. Well, you haven't physically brought that check anywhere yet. I have people that say, here's $1,000 with the offer. We're going to put $10,000 down with the purchase and sales. Oh, the offer's been accepted. Cool. We're going to have that home inspection in 10 days. Cool. And then I call and I'm like, you're not signing the P&S yet until after home inspection, so I don't need that money, but are you going to bring me the $1,000? Oh, we'll just bring everything to you at the home inspection in 10 days. No, sorry. I don't want, that's not going to work. I want that deposit for that offer, and I want it in my escrow account. I don't want just a copy of it. I want it. Some people say, well, we'll just bring you the whole thing. Now, if the home inspection is going to be like in 2 days, I will sometimes let that slide, but I'm not going to go a whole 10 days with no check, actual check in my escrow account to buying that offer. Anything crazy can happen. It's the same thing with deposits and rentals. So deposits are going to be held in the escrow account. Rentals have to be held in an interest-bearing account in the tenant's name and the landlord's name. Every year, you have to present that statement to your tenant. You have to say your security deposit has collected 30 cents interest. Would you like it? Most, even though they're staying there, most people will say, nah, just keep it in there. And it grows until they leave. If they say yes, even though they're staying there, you're supposed to take that 30 cents out. You leave the security deposit still in there and give it to them. If they leave, they get that security deposit with any interest that has been built up back, as long as there's obviously no damage or why you're holding that security deposit. So interest-bearing account. The return of the deposits has to be mutual, consensual between each party. So the buyer walks and says, I want my money back. If there's reasons like the home inspection failed or whatever, it's normally a breeze, okay? But you still got to get a release from your seller saying, okay, they're not moving forward because XYZ, sign this release so I can give them their money back. Sometimes if it's some kind of a dispute going on, I've had sellers where they're like, no, I'm not giving it back to them, blah, 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 blah. You know, they think that they're going to get it, but they're not. So, but it does have to be, you do have to give it a signature for the release. Net listings, we just talked about that. Iris, we talked about that when you were talking about a cap. Net listings illegal. You're absolutely going to see this on your Massachusetts exam. That's when the seller says, I want $200,000. I'm happy. I can list that house for $250,000, and you think you're going to get $50,000. No, you have to have, and maybe that's what you were thinking about when you said, isn't there a cap? You have to put an amount on. When you take that listing agreement, you have to say, I am charging you X% for this listing. If I sell your house, this is what I want to get. X% of the net listing, X% of the gross listing. And, excuse me, if that is going to be negotiated, like you might go and you might say, you know, I want to, you can't get the buyer and the seller close. But you know, if you take $1,000 off or $2,000 off that commission, you can make this deal happen. You can say that to the seller, listen, I'm going to take the commission, that off my commission. However, that other broker expected whatever percent that you said that he was going to get in MLS. If you're going to try to negotiate the commission down, you got to ask him if he's willing to take, or she is willing to take, a lesser amount. If they are not, then you're going to eat it on your side. Sometimes it's still worth it to do that to keep the deal together. But net listing is illegal. Maintenance of place, I think that's supposed to be maintain a place of business. I have maintenance. Maintains a place of business. Again, it has to be in Massachusetts if you have a Massachusetts license. It can't be a P.O. box. So it can be a home, it can be your home. My office is my home address. It doesn't have to be a brick and mortar building, but if you have a business in Massachusetts, a real estate business, you have to have a physical address and the board has to know where it is. The license has to be displayed. Even if you have a home business, the license has to be displayed. Your business license, your broker's license, the current license of anybody working in your office has to be displayed. Because anybody could knock on the door and say, I'm a tester from the board and I want to come in and see where your licenses are displayed. Record keeping, again, we talked about that, has to be kept confidential. The board can come and inspect, and see any of those documents at any time. It is illegal. This is a big one, and we're almost done here, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. This is a big one. It is illegal to recommend against the use of an attorney. So oftentimes, you're working with a buyer or you're working with the seller, and they say, should I have my own attorney? And you say to the buyer, well, why pay for your own attorney? Because the bank is still going to own this property with you until you pay it off. And you have the closing attorney who's going to do the title search and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. Why pay for your own attorney? Don't do it. Just say, if you prefer to have your own attorney to look over the documents or whatever, that's great. You can explain to them what the closing attorney is going to do, but don't ever say to them, you're already paying for, this attorney's fees and your closing costs. Why pay for somebody else? If they want an attorney to look over their documents or to do anything, review the purchase and sales agreement, make changes to the purchase and sales, they can. And the same on the seller side. Don't ever recommend against, because if something goes bad in that transaction, they're going to say, she told me not to get my own attorney. It's going to come back on you. Out-of-state property in Massachusetts is highly, highly regulated, the sale of out-of-state property. So, we've all heard of that. Oh, do you want to buy waterfront property in Florida? And then people buy it and they're all excited and it's going to be this development there and they go there. Oh yeah, it's, waterfront property on a pond with, 1 million alligators in it or whatnot. And so it's just swampland. It's still water, right? Waterfront, but it's not what you expected. And people get taken for a ride. So basically, if you are selling out-of-state property, that out-of-state property has to be regulated. That used to happen. You're laughing, you guys, but that used to happen. So it has to be registered. If you have that land, if you're selling some land somewhere, right, out of state, you have a Florida broker's license too, and you're selling some land there. That land, you have to tell the state about it. You have to register that land. They are oftentimes going, and there's a fee involved in that. They are oftentimes going to send somebody to go look at that land to make sure that it really is what you say. If the developer is going to develop that land, they have to notify the board that we're going to be developing this land within 7 days, so that they can go and they can investigate the property. Basically, for the test, know that out-of-state property is highly regulated, and you have to register. It has to be registered, and they are probably going to send somebody to take a look at it. So this is the registration and disclosure. Apartment listing service requirements. So Massachusetts no longer has regulations for apartment listing services. We are controlled on how we advertise listings, as far as making sure that our name is on there, if any broker's fee, what fees are involved, is there a credit check fee, all of that. But a lot of these apartment rental services aren't regulated as much as we are. However, if they are going to use a broker to help with their rental of so a landlord owns an apartment. He usually has this apartment service handle it. They're not getting any traction, so they are going to let a broker handle these listings now. The broker has to make sure that they tell the consumer if there's a fee that's due, and they are going to make sure that they let them know what that amount is. Everybody has to sign a document saying that they know that there was this realtor involved, that realtor's license has to be on there, and the name of the brokerage and so forth, and then that document is saved for 3 years. Okay, guess what? We're done. Get rid of these slides. All right, so that was good. Again, that's all in your Massachusetts portion. I sent you guys a document in email just before I started, and that is the candidate handbook, the Massachusetts licensing rule book, and that is going to have just about everything that we talked about in here. It also is in the red book. Remember, the red is Massachusetts. You see how much thinner this is? Mainly that's because a lot of the information in your general that's duplicated is not in there. Man, sorry. But you will, everything that's going to be on your Massachusetts portion of your exam will be in that red book. So I am going to jump off before I completely lose my voice. And thanks. Have a nice weekend and stay safe, guys.